Welcome to Royal Haunts and Part 4 of the 6 Wives of Henry VIII. Henry waited 3 years before remarrying, but that wasn't so much out of love for Jane Seymour as negotiations took time. He had also gained a reputation for not treating his wives so well, with tales of him poisoning Catherine of Aragon, executing Anne Boleyn, and having Jane Seymour cut open to save the child, leaving her to die mutilated. And so most of those available were not willing to take the risk. It was Henry's Chancellor, Thomas Cromwell, who urged Henry towards a match with one of the Duke of Cleves' sisters. Anne's Olbine, the younger, was sent to paint both Anne and her sister Amelia for Henry to make his choice. It was a convenient alliance, as the Duke of Cleves shared a dislike of Charles V of Spain, and more importantly to Cromwell was the religious reforms that had already progressed. Anne had a basic education, though she could read and write in her native tongue. She could only speak German, which may have been just as well after all Henry said about her. The first meeting between Henry and Anne didn't go down at all well, and Henry tried to find a loophole to get out of the marriage, but to no avail. Thomas Cranmer finally conducted the wedding ceremony at Hampton Court on the 6th of January, and by the 6th of July the annulment was announced. Virtually being ignored by her husband, Anne was probably just as relieved to get out of the marriage. Henry was so happy that she wasn't causing him the trouble of going through a divorce, or even having her arrested on some trumped-up charge, that Anne did very well for herself. She was given estates and a pension that guaranteed her security, but only on the agreement that she remained in England. In fact, Anne outlived Henry, his last 2 wives, and his son. When Mary I rode jubilantly into London as Queen, Anne was there. She also rode in the carriage with the Princess Elizabeth to Mary's coronation. Anne was a year younger than Mary, and despite their different upbringing, the two became firm friends. Anne never remarried, and being known as the King's beloved sister, was elevated to a status almost on a par with Mary and Elizabeth. She was often invited to court, where Henry was always pleased to see her. Some of the properties gained from the marriage settlement included Richmond Palace, which reverted back to the Crown upon her death, and what is now known as the Anne of Cleves House, which is reputed to be haunted by a 19th century tenant who hung herself. Though the house is named after Anne, there are no records that she ever visited the place, it originally being built for Henry as a stopping-off point on his travels. Eva Castle, the former childhood home of Anne Boleyn, was also given to Anne, and she may well still visit on the odd occasion. Though out of all of Henry's wives she seems to have been the only one to rest in some relative peace. With the shock of an unexpected, if forced, annulment, it was an even bigger surprise for Anne when Henry married a month later. Not only was Catherine Howard much younger, she had also been Anne's lady-in-waiting.